My friend Ashley teaches kindergarten, and we love laughing at the hilarious things that some of the 5-year-olds in her class say. Teacher, in 10 years, my dad will be 15. I love you, teacher, because you teached us to not say feats. Although kids are pretty wild, they have a great capacity to do good. A few weeks ago, Ashley's father passed away unexpectedly. She said she's been so impressed with the ability of these 5-year-olds to understand the difficulty of the situation. Cody, one of her 5-year-olds, came up to her one day and said, "Teacher, what's your dad's name?" She told him it was Wayne, and he said, "Will you write it right here?" So she did. Later that day, he came back and said, "Teacher, this is for you. This is your dad, Wayne, and this is you, and these are the flowers that people gave you." Ashley said it's been moments like this where she can see the kids processing and trying to understand what she's been going through. It's these moments that have helped her process her dad's death and begin to grieve and begin to heal.
Cody's ability to step into Ashley's shoes, imagine what she was feeling, and to feel it with her is called empathy. Because Cody empathized with Ashley, he understood what she might need to feel better and was able to respond to those needs in the best way he knew how. As he responded to those needs, he reacted just like almost any other child would. Children are actually rock star empathizers and often try and reach out when they see someone who needs help. In fact, researchers have found that even 8-month-old babies respond with empathetic body language when they sense that their mother is hurt or they hear another baby crying. Ashoka, the premier organization that assists social innovators across the world create positive social change, believes that empathy is the single most important skill for a person to possess because of its vital role in helping create positive social change. So today, we want to talk to you about why it is so important to actively and deliberately cultivate empathy in the children around us, and help us think about how we can do that.
To start, let's think about what the world would look like without empathy. In this world, self-interest would reign. Anger, aggression, bullying would be more common than not, and we wouldn't try to understand what people were feeling and thinking. This inability to take on the perspective of another not only influences childhood friendships, but relationships between nations. On the other hand, though, a world filled with empathy is a world filled with kindness and compassion. In this world, we experience positive relationships, meaningful relationships with close friends, as well as positive interactions with strangers. It's in this world that we're more resilient, courageous, and trusting. And that influences our own personal happiness and connection with others.
So if humans develop this empathy from when they're really, really young, why does our world sometimes sound and look and feel a lot more like the first world we described instead of the second one? Well, what if it's because instead of cultivating that empathy from when children are young, instead we choose to fill their time and use their energy putting it towards math and dance and sports and violin lessons and all of these activities that make a lot of noise in their lives. To clarify, none of these activities are bad, and they actually help children develop in really important ways. But it's the way that we approach those activities and sell them to our children that sends a message about what our real priorities are. And unfortunately, more often than not, the priorities that we're telling our children about are these activities and success in them instead of having empathy and helping others.
A Harvard study shed a little light on the subject. In this study, researchers surveyed 10,000 youth between the ages of 11 and 17 and asked what was most important to them: achievement in academics and extracurricular activities, their own personal happiness, or caring for others. 80% of the youth ranked personal achievement and happiness over caring for others. Now, a similar survey was administered to the parents and teachers of these youth, and 96% of the parents and teachers said that it was either very important, if not essential, to raise caring children. So, the parents and teachers are saying the most important thing is raising caring children, and the children were saying just the opposite.
On top of that, when you ask children what they think their parents' priorities are, they give a very different answer than parents do. 80% of children believed that their parents and teachers care more about achievement in school and in extracurricular activities than they do about caring for other human beings.
So, where did this problem come from? Unintentionally, by our actions and attitudes, we've restructured the priorities of young people to focus on personal success at the expense of their natural empathy.
So at this point, how confident do you feel that the children in your life really understand what your priorities are? As parents, mentors, and friends to children, we have an opportunity and obligation to translate our priorities from implicit to obvious. Additionally, we have a duty to help children and their innate empathy be a powerful force in creating positive social good instead of remaining an untapped resource.
So you're probably wondering what qualifies two childless undergraduates to talk about this. Well, Marissa and I had the amazing opportunity of being on a team of interns for Ashoka, that organization we mentioned that's rooting for empathy. As interns, we interviewed youth between the ages of 13 and 20 who were doing some pretty incredible things around the globe. For example, creating and designing a Braille printer made out of Legos, connecting a rural Indian village to the internet, and successfully designing and implementing an anti-bullying program in their middle school. As researchers, the big question that we wanted to answer was, how did these children get to these incredible places where they're making such positive impact? As we looked over our data and listened to their stories, we recognized that there were three main milestones that each story had in common. First, each child had a spark. This was an experience or something they learned that made them feel deep empathy for a person or a problem. Next, because the child was so moved by this experience, they decided to do something about it, so they took action. After that, they received important validation from the adults around them. Because of the validation they received, they ended up going further on their project or idea than they might have without that validation. What was really interesting, though, to Marissa and I, was that as we talked to these youth, we discovered that the only reason why they were able to accomplish such incredible things was because of the adults in their lives. Or maybe I should say it was only because the adults in their lives didn't snuff out their flame that they were able to accomplish such great things. It's sad, but in almost every interview, a child said something like, "My parents said no, but I bothered them until they said yes." Or, "I was really surprised when my parents agreed to let me pursue this idea." So somehow, parents have become either a real barrier or a perceived barrier to a child developing empathy and creating positive social change off of that. We don't think that parents and adults in general want to be that force that keeps children from pursuing those things. So because of that, based on the milestones that we found in our research, we've come up with 3 recommendations that can help parents enable empathy instead of keeping it from developing. So first, that's fostering an environment for sparking, encouraging exploratory action, and providing positive validation wherever possible. Chris, he was in 7th grade when he met Sebastian in an after-school tutoring program. It was here that they became friends, and Chris learned that Sebastian's family didn't have a computer at home. And Chris just couldn't believe this. He couldn't understand how what it would be like to not have a computer at home. And while he was running through these things in his mind, he remembered his family had a broken computer in their basement. So, with permission from his parents and help from friends at school, he fixed up that computer and gave it to Sebastian's family. For Chris, his spark came as he was putting himself in the shoes of Sebastian.
So, the spark is a little like broccoli. It's really good for children, but if you force it on them, they're not going to be too happy. So, it's really important that as adults, instead of trying to force it on them, that you create an environment where this spark can happen. Help them meet people of all different races, nationalities, socioeconomic status, and backgrounds. As they're meeting new people and having new experiences and gaining more knowledge, help them ask questions. Help them step into another person's perspective and understand what they might be feeling. Additionally, if they show special interest in something, help them brainstorm how they might be able to learn more.
After a spark, the next step is to take action. For Chris, that was finding that computer and fixing it up for Sebastian's family. For others, it was finding a pen pal in India or hosting really simple events to teach other youth how to help the homeless. In any case, it's crucial that we step back and let these youth take appropriate risks. We need to teach them that learning, not perfect execution, is success. As a favorite fictitious teacher of mine said to encourage her class, this is where we need to take chances, make mistakes, and get messy.
As we're encouraging children to take risks and do new things, it's really important that we validate their efforts and those risks. Felix, a fourth grader from Germany, was assigned a topic for a report on climate change. At first, he thought about it mostly in terms of his favorite animal, the polar bear. But as he researched more, he recognized there was a very real human component to climate change. After he finished his report, he issued a challenge to his class to plant 1 million trees. However, instead of calling him crazy or telling him to aim lower, his teacher asked him to present to other classes. His headmaster ended up taking him to other schools to teach other students about climate change. His parents actually bought him his first tree so that he could plant near his school. And local newspapers started picking up his story. If he hadn't been validated by the adults in his life, even though it seemed like a crazy challenge, today, his challenge and the organization that resulted from it would not have planted 14 billion trees. So, as adults validate the children in their lives, maybe it's by giving them $20 for a project, or simply giving them personal feedback saying, I'm proud of you. I am really happy that you're pursuing this project. Students will feel motivated and can go much further than we might think that they can at first.
So after these interviews, we wondered, who else experienced this journey? So we did a little research. We found the story of Agnes, who was born in 1910 in the Ottoman Empire. When she was 8 years old, her dad passed away. At this very impressionable time, she heard stories of missionaries in India who were helping the poor. It was a combination of her father's death and these stories of brotherly kindness that sparked within Agnes a desire to devote the rest of her life to helping others. She acted on this spark when, at the age of 18, she left her home and enrolled in the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Ireland. It was here that she received the name of Sister Mary Teresa. She was validated in her journey when she was granted permission to leave her convent to open an orphanage for children. And her validation culminated in her receiving the 1979 Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think the adults in her life fully understood the capacity of the young woman they were empowering? So today, we invite you to choose a child within your sphere of influence and help nurture their natural empathy.
As you do so, you will set the stage for a whole life of creating positive social change that is enabled by empathy. Start with fostering an environment for sparking. Then, make sure that you encourage exploratory action and risk-taking. As you provide positive validation whenever you can, you'll help them believe in themselves and in their ideas. Who knows? They might become the next Mother Teresa, or maybe they won't, but they could be the next Cody who draws a painting or picture for someone who's in need. And that is just as important. Thank you.